Namaste, I am Shivaswati and I am making this video again as a sign of God to help everyone understand that we are at the peak of development in technology. And for this development to improve quality of happiness in human existence, we need to start working on emotional management and stop the wars. The wars have to stop because it is a huge drain of resources. A lot of money goes wasted on defense equipment, on buying guns, when books can be bought instead at a much cheaper rate. Wars need to stop so that the world can become one, so that division no longer rules our minds and hearts. And we do not need to blame people of other nations for destroying our wealth. Largely because people don't do it. Political leaders do it. And political leaders do it under business pressures because defense industry is a huge money-making industry. 1/3 of world expenditure even now is going on defense. And a lot of businessmen profit a lot from it. For this reason, terrorism is kept alive so that nations are forced to buy weapons. Regionalism, casteism, class divisions, all these are kept alive by political leaders who work with businessmen so that divisions remain and investment of money keeps going on these businesses. We don't need wars to work with other people. We need peaceful agreements. We need methods of understanding perspectives. Methods like neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, are very good for understanding perspectives, but these are not taught by schools. Schools instead focus on the same emotional development which was started 200 years back. There has been no real evolution in teaching of psychology in schools or colleges, whereas programs like NLP and applied behavior analysis and several more have come up which can revolutionize communication, understanding perspectives, understanding other people, working in tandem with others. There is no real investment going on developing the mind. Investment is again going and fighting wars on developing the body probably, but the body is useless without the mind. So having a national wall is useless in the present times because nations have started collapsing with the internet age. There is no concept of independence being held by a national wall which is broken by the internet. So there is a need for governments to understand that the time now is to surrender the walls and make the world as one, and also that there cannot be one leader. There has to be a community, a communium of leaders like the United Nations, where several leaders form the council. Like in heaven they have a council where several leaders form the council and consensus is reached and the main leader is rotated. There cannot be one fixed leader simply because a man or a woman thinks very highly of himself or herself. Leadership has to rotate simply because times keep changing, technology keeps changing, learning keeps changing, and a new leader would be better equipped to deal with it than a leader who has been ruling since a long time. Though this means that several businesses lose their power because if they are in agreement with one leader and that leader goes away, so they lose their business. However, businesses have to understand that they exist to serve the community. They have more than enough money to survive, even if there is not excess profit. Monopolies survive even when there are several small scale industries running on the side. So you don't need so much money that you need to buy clothes made of gold, as people do, or you need to buy shoes which are selling in millions of dollars and bags which are selling in lakhs of rupees. You don't need that. That is not functional. That is exotic, as if you are a piece of creation of art and you are glorified, or you are embedded with jewelry to be exhibited. You don't want to feel exhibited. You want to feel yourself. You want to be accepted as you are. Even as a businessman, even as a businesswoman, you don't need to buy a pair of shoes every day. You are living with the same pair of shoes for 6 months, 6 years earlier, and it will be completely fine to do it again. What you need is an expression, a new expression every day, where you can speak your heart out, where people hear you and acknowledge you, not because of the shoes you wear, but because of the words you say, because of the thoughts you think. So businesses need to acknowledge that people need expression, not wars. And if you give them power of expression, you will make a lot more profit than you are making through the defense industry. So the gods are saying that all these small riots all over the world are happening because there is direction to make the world one unified whole under a group of leaders at the top. It cannot be one leader. It cannot be one country ruling the world like Hitler. It has to be a group of people, and which needs to go under rotation so that welfare of humanity is kept at the highest and not welfare of an individual. Therefore, unless there is understanding in the governments that this is needed, wars will continue. But you don't need it. You don't need to have a pandemic to understand that online education, online therapy, online work is extremely useful and much more useful than simply offline work. There is a lot of work which can be done online without having to waste time in traveling and traffic jams. The pandemic made the traffic jams redundant. Suddenly, the transport problem was completely solved, simply because people were allowed to work online. The barriers of having an office were broken. Similarly, the barriers of countries can be broken. You don't need a flood to make the world one whole. You can do it simply by investing resources and getting agreements from different countries to break the national walls, remove visa restrictions, and make the world one whole. Now, the visa restrictions are so terrible that people who are actually talented, very few of them can go abroad to a Western country and work, and very few Westerners can, who are actually interested in social work, actually would like to come to India and places where there is a lot of work to be done with people. They don't find motivation to come and stay here, largely because the living conditions are not at par with Western nations, and hence we do not have as much specialized labor as we would like, and they do not have as much talented labor as they need. The only people who can go there are people with degrees and certificates, which means that these are people who conform with norms, who conform with the educational institutions, and who do not focus on creativity or innovation, who can be enslaved, to put it bluntly. Only people who have referrals, people who have been working in a job since 15 years, people who can work as clerks in clerical jobs, who do not have anything original to offer, are invited to go abroad into the Western nations easily. People who need higher positions, people who need to be creative, people who can actually contribute intellectually are blocked because they might be self-employed, or the salaries which they desire may not be paid by the Western countries because of the qualifications, certificates which they desire, which are more focused on theory examinations than on experience. So countries like Canada and Australia block permanent residency at 45 years. They do not allow children with autism and special needs children to come and live there, even though those countries are sparsely populated. They have restrictions which treat people of other nations as inferior or not up to their mark, which may not be true. It may be a complete bias. So if you remove visa restrictions and if you allow free labor, then a lot of talent can travel all over the world and contribute significantly. Terrorism would reduce, smuggling would reduce, wars would reduce, and you can have a lot more resources for development of human potential to improve the happiness quality of life. Just having a surfeit of consumer items does not mean happiness. You need to be able to speak freely. You need to be able to eat the food which you like. For example, if you are a vegetarian, you may not get the food you like in Western nations easily available because they insist on non-vegetarian culture. If you are not an alcoholic, you may be a misfit in popular parties simply because they insist on being intoxicated and in a non-thinking mood to mix with everyone else who is non-thinking. So a lot of inner expression is blocked because of such restrictions which are imposed by largely Western culture and also our culture, Indian culture, because we require lot of focus on traditions and customs and doing things in a very fearful manner, where we are not allowed to speak openly. We have to be very guarded in our behavior. We stay in joint families and hypocrisy is encouraged a lot, which is not accepted in Western nations. So when a Westerner tries to come and work here, she or he feels not understood to a large extent. Very few of them can actually stay and work here. And people from India who go abroad, very few of them are unconventional. People who go abroad are those who fit the mold. Otherwise, they are terrorists or smugglers who can travel without visas. So in either case, you are missing out on mobility of talent by visa restrictions and by creating wars instead of simply surrendering to the concept of one world, one whole. Prevent the third world war, make the world one whole. This is a message, a loud message from the gods. The pandemic is making the world one whole. It has to be done in a positive manner also. And it can be done if people are not so rigid about having national wars, about their religions, about their customs, if they are open to understanding perspectives which can be encouraged by teaching education mechanisms like NLP and applied behavior analysis in schooling, so that a lot of people are open to accepting that a lot of people can be different and yet be nice and good. It is not such a difficult concept. We are at the verge of the new age, and this has to happen. It is better that it happens peacefully than through wars. Thank you. Please share, like, and subscribe.